With this video, we're beginning another section. I've talked about Gottman and the Gottman-Goodhouse method, which is somewhat blue pill. It's for the alpha guys who need to beta up a little bit and be more loving and kind. Now we're going to, and I received some criticism. Oh, how can you're the purple pill coach now? No, I'm not saying mix this. I'm saying use one or the other depending on your situation. The other thing I want to assure you, I have studied psychotherapy for over 3 years now. Okay, I'm a PhD. They always told us, once you dig your own hole, as a PhD student, you can go out and dig whatever holes you want. So I'm digging holes, and I have dug my hole, and I hit gold with this one. I hit black gold. We hit oil. And I want to assure you, I have curated these psychotherapy methodologies, marriage counseling methodologies. I've rejected well over 90% of it. I'm only telling you guys about the stuff that works in a red pill context. So what works is the Gottman-Goodhouse model. What works is David Schnarch's differentiation, developing your frame therapy. And the other thing that works in psychotherapy is cognitive behavioral therapy. We haven't talked about cognitive behavioral therapy, but this is your introduction to CBT. And next week, we're going to talk about behavioral therapy. And we're going to talk about how I trained a rat in 2 weeks to do a whole bunch of things and how I did it. Hi, everybody. It's Dave, the Red Pill Coach, and I'm back once again, to teach you guys how to make your life better and how to make your relationships work. I'm back today with probably my most controversial video and a little bit different format as well. I found that it's very difficult to get the audio and visual and all that stuff to work together. So I'm switching back to audio format. I'll get you some pictures to look at. And if you want to see how I'm looking, just understand I've lost a bunch of weight. I'm looking great. But it's interfering with my ability to teach you guys because the video is taking too long to get right. So we'll switch back to a little bit easier format and continue the lessons, and hopefully I'll be able to pick up the pace a little bit. This is my most controversial video yet. The name of it is How to Make Your Bitch Sit, Stay, Lay Down, and Come. Pretty controversial stuff. And let me tell you where it comes from. Because last week in a session with one of my clients, he accused me of using animal training tactics with women. He said, Dave, you're treating women like animals with some of the suggestions you're making. And I was interested. I was intrigued that maybe that's exactly what I was doing. So I turned on the cable or Netflix and watched a couple-ish episodes of a TV series called Dog Possible. It's about animal training, and he takes problem dogs, makes them livable again. And after reading it and after watching a few episodes, I realized, you know what, my friend? You are absolutely correct. That's exactly what I'm doing. And I am here to own it. Let's go. Okay, so first of all, we're all fucking animals. Let me repeat that. For those of you who didn't hear it the first time, all of us are animals. Human beings, Homo sapiens, are animals. And for at least the last 200,000 years, we were humans. We were Homo sapiens. We walked upright. But we did not show the slightest sign of symbolic thinking. Sure, we made tools, we made fire, we danced around that fire, and we fucked like rabbits around that fire. But there is no evidence that we began to think creatively or abstractly until about 65,000 years ago. And then suddenly, for no particular reason, beginning in South Africa most likely, and this was after the Toba eruption, there was a super eruption about 70,000 years ago, which essentially wiped out almost all the hominids on the planet. Well, after this, a group arose, a group of hominids, early modern Homo sapiens, arose in South Africa. They suddenly showed evidence of symbolic thinking. The crude, the practical stone and bone tools suddenly became ornate. They became ornamental. They became decorative, far less crude, and far more pretty than it needed to just skin an animal. And at the same time that this happened, Homo sapiens exploded across Africa, into the Middle East, and in fact, all the way to the South Pacific, in probably as little as a few hundred years. Now think of it. More than 200,000 years of human history, we did not think. And then suddenly, we started to think abstractly. Something happened. And then about 25,000 years ago, something else happened. We don't know what it was exactly, but it was so dramatic and it was so sudden that a lot of people claim there's probably 8 or 10 TV series on this. But Alien Agenda and Ancient Aliens and all these shows. They claim humans were created by aliens. They came to Earth. They told us how to build, tools, and they told us how to plan and organize society. That must have been pretty dramatic, folks, if this is actually a credible theory. So we don't know what that something was, but if it wasn't ancient aliens, it was probably religion, because religion arose almost immediately after that. And right about that time that religion, or that we think a religion arose, and that people began living together, we also find evidence of communal rooms, i.e. temples and churches. We also find evidence, and not evidence, overwhelming evidence, that suddenly, during this time period, humans started to bury their dead. Not just throw them in pits in a communal barrier, but to lay their dead in repose, hands over their stomach, like we do with dead bodies today. And they were buried with personal effects. Sometimes, effects that would have taken years to create. Jade medallions and, things like that. Suddenly we're realizing that these are people. And the dead are honored and need to be respected. That only happened about 20,000 years ago, folks. Before that, we took our dead and we threw them in pits. And at the same time, something else happened. Agriculture developed. Individual graves became a thing, and people started living in settled cities and towns. Now, it was only about 10,000 years ago that actual cities began to be constructed. And it was probably 4,000 or 5,000 years ago that writing was invented. And folks, that is human history so far. Civilization has been around for around 10,000 years, and that is less than 1% of all the history of modern Homo sapiens. The lesson here, folks, is we are not civilized humans with a thin veneer of barbarism. No. We are fucking animals, barbarians, with a thin veneer of civilization. So I'm telling you, take the red pill. Recognize that men and humans are animals. But folks, I got news for you. That means that women are also animals. So if we accept this fact, what exactly can we do with it? Well, we could whine and bemoan our fate, like MGTOWs and incels. We could rail against the light. We could spit up the red pill like Cypher and go eat steak. Or we could accept the facts, and we could use them to our advantage, and to the advantage of our families, wives, and children. So how do we do that? Well, first understand the red pill is just reality. It's nothing more than reality. And the reality is that women are animals, and that their animal desires control them, just as they control us. Second, if you need to get control of an animal, there are many thousands of years of tried and true methods for achieving this control. And we shall now apply those methods to the control of women and briefly compare their efficacy with the ability of humans to control other animals. We first note that women have many characteristics in common with dogs. I said it, and it's true. Women are pack animals. They follow the leader. They are overly concerned with dominance hierarchies. They avoid conflict, especially with the pack leader. They become extremely agitated and unhappy when placed in a situation where the dominance hierarchy is unclear. And most important for our purposes, just like dogs, the woman's sexual response is closely related to her perception of your place in the dominance hierarchy. Let me repeat that. A woman's sexual response is related very closely to their perception of your place in the dominance hierarchy. And then finally, just like dogs, women need clear boundaries or they will annihilate and destroy your home. So how do you get a job to... strike that. So how do you get a dog to shut up and listen to you? It's very simple. You must establish your dominance. Now, we talked about how to establish your dominance in Married Red Pill all the time. You establish your dominance by developing your frame. So how do you suppose you establish your dominance with a dog and get the dog to shut up and listen to you? It is by establishing your dominance, and you establish your dominance by establishing and imposing your frame on the animal. And how do you do that? Do you grab the animal and force them to accept what you're doing? Force them to listen to you? Absolutely not. When you grab an animal and try to force them to do something, they pull away. But if you engage in the process that animal trainers call respectful detachment, you can get them to accept you as dominant and get them to finally listen. Now, notice, if you try to give a dog affection or attention or reward them too much, what do? They walk all over you. They even become aggressive. They will destroy your home if you let them. But if you refuse even eye contact with them when they are being disobedient, and if you reward them only when they are being obedient, then guess what? They start to listen. They shut up. They start to get the idea in their head that perhaps you are the dominant one, and perhaps they need to show some respect. And again, the word for this is establishing your frame. And to a woman, respect for the strong frame of a man it's not directly tied into, it is her perception of your level of alpha, which means her perception of you as the dominant partner. And that means if her respect for your frame is keyed into her perception of alpha, and if her perception of your alpha is keyed into her sexual feelings, then in most cases, you need to increase your level of alpha. If you want her to have sexual feelings for you, then she needs to see you as dominant. Yeah, if you want her to despise you and be unhappy, if you want her to piss all over the floor, then by all means, let her be the dominant one. And how do you establish a dominance with a dog? Well, as I said, it's respectful detachment. Again, if you greet a dog with smiles and hugs all the time, they grow to expect it. They stop responding when you give them smiles and hugs as a reward for good behavior. Because, why bother? As soon as you see them, you throw your arms around them and give them a big hug and tell them they're a good dog, and then give them a treat. They always get what they want. If you run to them and throw your arms around them the minute you see them, what do? They pull away. And you know what else they do? They keep pulling away so long as you keep pursuing. However, if you come home and there's shredded whatever plastic on the floor, and you're indifferent to the dog, you know what they will do? They won't pull away. Very quickly, they will come to you. They will nudge their nose under your hand, and they will start begging you to pay them some attention and to pet them. Often, owners have a bad dog that eats, and I put quotes, bad dogs in quotes, because there are no bad dogs. There's only bad owners. So if you have a dog that eats off the table or growls at a house guest, what do? Well, of course, the common solution is you pet the dog to calm her down. But when you do this, all this does is reinforce the bad behavior that you don't want. Don't reinforce bad behavior. Instead, when your dog behaves badly, the solution is to avoid eye contact, ignore the bad behavior, redirect the dog away from the bad behavior, and finally, reward the dog when they comply. Now, using this methodology, it's extremely effective when you're present. You can certainly train your dog to stop pulling on the leash in a few sessions. You can get her to behave when she is around you with just a bit more work. But of course, getting her to behave when you are not around for her to see, well, that's another level entirely, and I have to break the news to you that it may not even be possible. Because unfortunately, dogs are going to be dogs no matter what you do. And that's one of the things you need to accept. Now, taking these lessons from basic dog training tactics, which in reality is nothing more than very well scientifically established behavioral conditioning and training, along with some neuro-linguistic programming, we can take these and we can learn a good deal. By looking at our dogs, we can learn how to interact with women. I am convinced respectful detachment is the key to dealing with all the bitches. Achieve respectful detachment, and you are not needy. You are not whiny. You have advanced your attractiveness considerably in this and every woman's eyes. Even if it doesn't make you the alpha dog, you can at least become more of a lone wolf. While you're detached, and it's important to remember, while you are detached, you are still aware of the woman's behavior. You need to always be looking for excuses to reward her. Just like with a dog. You still cuddle her and pet her and reward her for good behavior, and you delight in giving her treats. Just like with your loving and faithful hound, you love her with all of your heart. And you know what else you would do? You would sacrifice for her. You would even give up your life for her. That's the love that an owner has for his dog. That's also the love that a husband can have for his wife. So at the same time you're looking for this love and looking for reasons to reward her, you are also detached. You are detached because you are not controlled externally. You are not manipulated by her whims. You are controlled internally by your own well-considered, logical, masculine needs and desires. And this, folks, is the true meaning of DNGAF. Don't GAF about her bad behavior any more than you care about it when the dog gets on the table. Define good behavior and bad behavior in your own mind and then set about paying attention to it. Reward good behavior, ignore bad behavior. Now, when you ignore, you're basically punishing this bad behavior, and you should never administer anything that remotely resembles punishment when you're angry. Never, ever punish in anger. And most punishment shouldn't be even identifiable as punishment. It's simply ignoring the behavior. You punish like a stern father. Punish like the owner of a beloved dog that behaved badly. You don't punish like an angry, sex-deprived husband. And I hope that is clear. Now, you'll still have accidents. Oh, yes, she will still piss on the floor if you don't open the door quick enough. But over time, these episodes will decrease and become less and less. Over time, you will learn to communicate better with your fun-loving little sex puppy. And you can learn to open the door for her, even before she starts to bark. One day, She will realize that you are the dominant one in this relationship. And after a period of fierce shit testing, in most cases, she will relax. She will be happy. She will open up sexually. And now, for the final secret. This is what I do with my clients. I am like the dog trainer in Dog Possible, except I work with the owner, not the dog. It's true. We're animals. And 90% of what we do and 95% of what we think is programmed into us by our biology or by society. Some of it is good code, but much of it is not good code. And almost all of it can be deprogrammed if you have enough time and patience. So go forth and experience that patience. Understand that you're the man, that you're in control. Be benevolent, be loving, be kind, but be strong.